Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome, as usual, to an impromptu video. Really, in this video, I just wanted to make an announcement or two and just highlight one or two little things that have been talked about in the media. I hope you're all doing well. I hope everybody's had a good week, got through it okay, and I hope you're all getting the opportunity to chill or do what you guys want to do for this upcoming weekend. I've had a relatively busy week, but okay, ups and downs, don't we all? And the weekend, no big plans, but hopefully you can get out a little bit. That will be all weather permitting. Yes, so just a couple of things really. I want to keep this video pretty brief, but I do, as you may or may not know, keep an eye on mainstream stuff and do watch the telly every now and then and stuff like that, and just to see what's being talked about and how it's being presented to us and all the rest of it. I'm definitely not one of those people who says, well, I don't watch TV. In other words, that qualifies me as a critical thinker or something like that. No, absolutely not. I think it's quite vital to keep one foot in that kind of world, if you like, and keep an eye on what's being talked about and all the rest of it, because that is kind of the source that most people in our society, draw their water from, if you like, right? So, yeah, I absolutely do watch, not sit there avidly at the dinner table at 6 o'clock, but I will take a peek at the news and I will have a little look at the odd documentary that crops up, especially ones that involve traveling and things like that. I find them quite interesting, and I don't necessarily focus on what's being said. I focus more on what I see myself, and that's the key, right? And you can then compare the two and come out with some very interesting results. And the same goes for one or two headlines that have cropped up in the last week or so. Good day if you're an astronaut, isn't it? If you get stuck in the ISS, you know that you will be rescued, so that's good. I'm really chuffed to bits that they managed to get out of that swimming pool unscathed. The thing about natural law and things like laws of thermodynamics is that they are laws. That means they are how things occur in nature always, right? That doesn't deviate from that. So when people tell you that there are humans that spend some time in an impossible region that we call space, where there's an ever-expanding total vacuum of space, and that space allegedly finds itself right next to a pressure system that we call Earth, and we have gas pressure, which means that our realm must be contained. Pressure is the result of containment, right? Then something is wrong with that narrative, because you can't have one next to the other. Because you see, here's the thing. The gas pressure that we have here on Earth would fill the available space instantaneously. That isn't my idea. That is not something concocted by let's say, people with too much time in their hands or whatever, or trying to pick holes in the official narrative. That is natural law, right? That's the second law of thermodynamics, in actual fact, to be precise. You can go look it up and try and decipher what it says, but that's exactly what it boils down to. High pressure next to low pressure. And then what ensues when that situation happens, right? So there are no people swirling around an impossible, spinning water ball, corkscrewing through space at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour, in a little tin can, and them themselves orbiting Earth at 17,500 miles an hour, right? No. Nobody's been out anywhere, right? But, entertaining as it is, I had a little chuckle, but it is really astounding how many people still fall for that nonsense, because the information to debunk it is pretty available. You have to know, of course, where to look, and I'm sure a lot of people who aren't awake to the fact maybe were unaware that such things as natural laws do exist, how things are in nature always. The always bit is key there, right? But there you go. I've been saying it for a long time. Others, good, reliable ones online, that is, have been saying it for a long time too. But yet people don't really pay much attention, or are quite happy with attaching themselves to the finger pointing and the use of stigma and vilifying those of us who do know what they're talking about. I've done plenty of research to back it up as well, but because we don't appeal to consensus and appeal to authority, that is something that's to be laughed at, by all means. But the laugh is on those who believe that nonsense, right? Anyway, so there we go. Astronauts saved again. Well done. Second point, which is of real interest in that sense because it's more down my street, and it's to do with some of you might have come across this news. Now, some of the fringe stuff surrounding this story, of course, in my opinion, is again more BS, but I'll just say it in my the best way I can. Apparently, allegedly, a team of people using some new technology, radar-based, whatever, have discovered, but are unclear as to what exactly, but have discovered that below the pyramids in Egypt, the three famous ones that are perfectly aligned with Orion's belt, are actually structures that go down over a kilometre deep into the ground. So in other words, what you're looking at are just the tops of constructions and whatever below ground surface that you can't see, that's not visible to the naked eye, or to any eye for that matter. Now, I find the timing of that announcement, if you want to call it that, very, very interesting, because it's something that some of us, again, have been talking about for a while now. And I think the notion of not all you see is what's actually there is catching on with a lot of people, because we have evidence of it in our everyday lives, right? If you go out of your door, if you live in any town or village or city throughout the world, right, you will find evidence of what's called colloquially within the community as mud flood. Basically, what that means is that when you look at certain buildings, there is evidence that that building is pretty submerged, right? That the ground has come up quite significantly. Now, we could talk about how engineers raise roads up and all the rest of it. Yes, we know all that. But I'll be talking about this when I give a bit of a presentation on the 29th of April at the Flat Earth Social, because there are different arguments, or there are different scenarios I'm going to put to people in the group, and then allow for one to be chosen that makes the most sense, right? But yes, roads will have been brought up, but you wouldn't be building buildings for you then to have to bring roads up, for you then to have to build concrete stairways, gangplanks I like to call them, that are halfway up that building. And then lo and behold, you've got windows below ground surface too. That is total nonsense, right? Yes, that's what you see, but that wouldn't have been in the original planning. That is what's come after a restoration process, which is where the Victorian restoration is very key in that, which I'm going to be talking about in a little bit of detail. Not too heavy, but just to kind of outline and highlight some points. So this whole thing about the pyramids, just to get back to that, of there being things below them, doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, I'm surprised it hasn't been mentioned in a more public sort of way than this already, to be honest with you. And by the way, these pyramids aren't just to be found in Egypt. They are found throughout the world, of similar size, by the way, as well. Here in England, for example, right? But a lot of the times what they do is they put, I say they, the powers that are, will put a bit of a stage set on top of it. They'll call it a ruin from the English Civil War, like in the case of Corfe Castle, or some sort of remnants of a part of a castle, like, let's say, the Tor and Glastonbury. But what you're actually looking at when you're looking at the ruin is the sleight of hand, because what you should be focusing on is the mound that it's built on. That's what's being concealed. So you have your grass that's grown over it, you have your ruin on the top of it, and people look at that. People don't focus on the actual, the base below it. But like I say, you get this all around the world. There are plenty of places throughout continental Europe that shows signs of these pyramid type structures. Plenty of places in England or throughout the UK and elsewhere around the world too. Egypt, of course, being the most prominent, famous ones, because that's where they want all your eyes fixated. Only there. Pharaohs, Cleopatra, blah, blah, blah. Right? That's what they want. But in actual fact, it's very widespread. So I thought that was an interesting one, because like I say, if you go around your own vicinity and have a look, the buttresses, for example, on the side of a church will tell you that those buildings go way deeper than what you see, because the bit of church that's above ground level wouldn't need buttresses, those supporting bits of bricks that go up the side of the church. They sort of come off the main structure about 1 foot or 2 feet off, and they get wider as they go down. Yeah, pretty much every church building has these buttresses. But for the height of them that you're seeing, you don't need them. Well, that's only got one other explanation, and that is that the building itself, the construction, is way bigger, but it's concealed because the ground has come up. And when I say has come up, that sounds very flippant. I don't know what's happened, because of course it's concealed from our history books, isn't it? Which is why it's being questioned so rigorously. Because why is it being concealed? I mean, they'll hide it in old so-called biblical scriptures and writings. They'll make mention of things like floods and stuff like that. Yeah. But in actual fact, the floods that should be mentioned aren't in biblical scriptures, but actually in more up-to-date, more contemporary times. It should be in our immediate history, because don't forget, those buildings were there before the ground came up, and they're brick buildings. Most churches and town halls and all your bank buildings, like the ones in the City of London, and all these amazing bunker-looking buildings, solid-looking buildings, and all the rest of it, right? Well, if you take the cladding off those buildings, you'll find brickwork on pretty much all of them. So the bricks had to be made somewhere. They had to be stored somewhere. They had to be produced. They had to be transported. The logistics alone, right? And these buildings go back way longer than the attribution to the Victorians that we're told to believe, right? No, they were restored by the Victorians, not built by them. So when you see your buildings with 1878 chiseled into the brickwork or whatever, that will be the date that it was restored, or was finished in terms of the restoration process, not built. The manpower alone wouldn't have been around, not with what was going on according to our history books in those days. You just wouldn't have had the people to do it. And that's just for starters. There's 1,000 other reasons why it wouldn't have happened the way we're told. But anyway, yeah, I'm going off on a tangent there, but I thought this whole little story, sneaking this whole pyramid thing in, was quite interesting, because of course it's alluding to the fact there are much more to the constructions we see above ground level than meets the eye. And by putting that out there in a semi-mainstream way, it's getting people used to it, and trying to sort of develop a bit of acceptance around it before it comes out in a big way by the likes of us, because there's plenty more people catching on to it, is the point I'm making. The amount of people I've spoken to who've been on holiday somewhere and come back, and I've had a chat with them on the phone or whatever, and they've said, blimey, since our conversation, I've been noticing this on buildings and that on buildings. It's amazing, and now I can't stop seeing it. Lots of people, not just one or two, quite a lot of people. So, once someone knows what to look out for, you start not being able to unsee it, right? And I think that the building aspect is one of the big giveaways to the deceit and the lies that we've been fed throughout our lives, particularly in those vital years of our schooling, which is where it counts, of course. Anyway, right, so I just wanted to bring that to you. Furthermore, there will be a Flat Earth meetup on Tuesday, the 25th of April, 1900 hours, 7 p.m. At the Bridge House Hotel in Furdown, on the edge of Bournemouth. Joe Hanvey, I do believe, and Steve Alonso are going to be beamed in via Zoom or whatever platform we're going to be using that evening to talk about all things flat Earth, but from their viewpoint. I think there's going to be a bit of biblical references in there as well. It will be an interesting little chat to have a listen to what they have to say about it. So I shall be there, and do come along if you want to be there too. Like I said in the previous video, we're a very nice group of people. I enjoy going out, and trust me, I'm not necessarily the most compatible person when it comes to hanging out with friends and being sociable. I do like a lot of my time to myself, just the way I'm wired, can't help it. But I do feel comfortable in that group of people, which says a lot for that group of people. So everybody's welcome, no matter what your viewpoints on things are. At least you can talk amongst this group of people and not feel judged, and more importantly, not be judged. And of course, in April, but I'll talk about that another time, I'll be doing my little talk surrounding what I just touched on a few minutes ago. Okie dokie. So on that note, thank you very much for looking in. I keep looking at the clock because I'm always a little bit anxious that I don't overstep the mark, because when I start talking, I seem to not be able to stop, unfortunately, for you. But like I said, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you all soon. Some of you much, much sooner. Until then, take it all easy, and ta-ta for now.